And those are the two properties that we're focused on and telling the stories of how we're building those through Finding Promised Land. So through our Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. So social media.
That's 100% true. Guys, what he just said is true gold, people. Solid 18 karat gold information, what he just gave you.
And also, like, are they doing a good job with creating content that is resonating? I hate to say it, but are they educated, and do they know what's working with the algorithm? And are they able to create content that has a higher likelihood?
But I want to shift gear and specifically talk about glamping and the eco hotel industry. All right, welcome, my beautiful people. Today I'm super excited. I have someone that I've been admiring from afar for some time now. His name is Brian Linton, and he has a very interesting story. Just to give you a quick background on him, if you're not aware of who he is, but he is the co-founder of Finding Promised Land, which is, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But he comes from an interesting background because he wasn't in the short-term rental industry most of his life. In fact, he started a $20 million clothing business, and I'll let him talk about that business. And then he transitioned into the hospitality industry. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Brian. Brian, tell us who you are and what you're about.
Thanks, Fernando. I'm Brian Linton. So I'm the co-founder of our media property, which is called Finding Promised Land, which is where we share all of our behind the scenes stories and learnings and failures of building a boutique hospitality business, which includes the Rex Hotel, which is our boutique hotel concept, sort of mountain boutique hotel, and then Ferncrest, which is our glam crowned concept. And those are the two properties that we're focused on and telling the stories of how we're building those through Finding Promised Land. So through our Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, so social media, where we have about 700,000 collective followers that follow along with our work.
Super impressive. So Brian, tell us your journey. Like what you started in the fashion industry, correct?
Yeah. So while I was in college, more than 15 years ago now, almost 20 years ago, about 20 years ago, I started a jewelry company, a resort accessory brand, importing things like shell necklaces and earrings and flip-flops and hats. And I was selling, while I was in college, I got into entrepreneurship, and I started going up and down the East Coast of the United States, selling this merchandise to the coastal boutiques all up and down the coast. So I would drive down to Key West as a 19-year-old, and then I'd work my way back up all the way to Maine. And I would sell this merchandise along the way. And part of the reason for that was I've always been really into business and brand building, but also because I grew up overseas in Southeast Asia. And when I came to the States, I saw some pretty clear arbitrage opportunities between the markets and the merchandise that I would be buying in, say, like Thailand or the Philippines and all these other places. And then coming to the States and going to these like areas along the coast where they would have boutiques selling the same merchandise for, 10 times, 20 times the price. So very basic business model at the time, but I started arbitraging that and selling jewelry and whatnot to those stores. And that led me into then the fashion industry as a whole. After college, started a brand called United by Blue, and United by Blue, which was the next decade plus of my career, growing a sustainable apparel company into a company that at one point had 100 people, $20 million in sales, and several stores in the States, and a really big and loyal following of about 1 million people. We're selling about 1 million products a year before I transitioned out of that in COVID, during COVID.
Nice. So that leads me into your current venture. So because there's you made a pretty big shift, right? What caused that shift, and why the hospitality industry?
So real estate has always been something that we were doing in the background. As I was growing the apparel company, we had done single family, we had done duplexes, we actually did, we bought our very first house that we bought, I want to say in 2015. We actually had an Airbnb way before anybody talked about Airbnb. I mean, this is like early stages of Airbnb. We lived above it. It was a duplex, so we lived there, and then beneath us was a one bedroom apartment in Philadelphia, sort of in center city Philadelphia, and we Airbnb'd it, and it was phenomenally successful because at the time there was only a handful of Airbnbs in the whole city of Philadelphia, and so we were one of the first ones there, and so we were printing cash through that Airbnb, and we only transitioned out of doing Airbnb probably in 2018 because we were just so busy with everything else that we had going on in life. We had a couple kids at that point. We had our business, the apparel company, and so we honestly left the hospitality industry to focus on other things in life. And looking back, it was like it was a little bit silly that we did that, but so I think it was always in the back of my head that we loved real estate, but we loved really the hospitality side of real estate more so than anything. And so when COVID struck and we were in Philadelphia and we were looking for an escape, like many people in these cities were, a lot of people that we knew were buying, cheap cabins in the woods and, escaping and doing that thing, buying a cabin that they turned into an Airbnb. We started looking a little bit differently and started looking at rundown motels. So in the summer of 2020, so right in the thick of sort of that COVID year, we found what was going to become the Rex Hotel and went to go see it. We closed on it in October of 2020 and moved our family there. So we literally moved at the time we had 2 kids, now we have 3. We moved into one of the units at the old motel, and we lived there for a year as we fixed it up and opened it up. And so that was the journey into hospitality. Honestly, at the time, that seemed like a stopgap COVID project. Didn't really have long-term intention with that. And what turned out, though, it's a small little property. It's only 10 keys. Sleeps about 28 people when all of them are full. But it turned into a wildly successful business and a wildly successful brand. And so we started actually with so basically the numbers of that is the Rex Hotel, this little motel in the mountains of the Poconos, generates $500,000 a year, $300,000 in profit. We bought it for $242,000. And at the time, previously, the salary that I was taking from my $20 million clothing company was $150,000. So I felt like I was doing okay, but I had this company, but it wasn't really, it was more of a career. I had investors, so I had a salary, and it was definitely more of a job than, even though it was entrepreneurial, it was feeling more like a job and less entrepreneurial. And I had a paycheck, right? And so then when I started the Rex Hotel, and all of a sudden we're pulling in $200,000-$300,000 in profit, net income for ourselves, it was like, man, there's a better way to do this than selling t-shirts and selling clothing and barely getting by, even though we have $20 million flowing through the bank account every year. We're not making much at all. It's a very not good, not profitable industry. So that was the
margins are pretty small, huh?
Very small margins, very risky. It's hard to be profitable even at $20 million in the clothing industry. That's why the rate of failure is so high in that industry. It's a cutthroat, difficult industry. You're dealing with retailers that cancel their orders and then, put you under. We had a $3 million, $4 million business with Target. We had a couple million, $2-3 million with REI. Both of those at some points, don't order, and then it changes the business entirely. Like you have this key customer risk where you just have so many eggs in all of these different baskets, versus with the hospitality industry, obviously, like we're more diversified. Like when we're renting rooms for 2-3 nights, we're not relying upon any one given customer. We have a much more stable business. And then same thing on the e-commerce front, when we're transacting online and we're selling $100 of merchandise to somebody from the apparel company, but it costs us $50 to even sell them because of meta ads and then the shipping cost and then the returns that come in because of clothing. all of a sudden you have a website that's generating $10 million, but can't make money either, versus a hospitality business. You're transacting this experience, and you're transacting higher ticket volume. So you're, $500-$600 for a stay, right? 2 nights, maybe a few $100s ADR. So you actually have this really profitable transaction that is not getting returned. Yes, you might have customer service issues, and you might have to like refund some amount sometime, but you don't have this like 18% return rate like you have with clothing. I guess my long-winded way of saying, it dawned on me that I was not passionate nor happy with my career in the apparel industry, and it was really weighing heavy on me and creating a lot of stress in my life. And not that hospitality is easy, nor is it stress-free, but it is a very great business when you get it right. And for me, getting it right was not doing Airbnb, but it was this transition to building my own brands and building my own loyal following that comes and follows me and goes to my properties. And like, really, it's a community of people that want to stay at what we build. And that's been the really interesting, eye-opening part of this all. And that's why we are essentially, we're over 95% direct booking rate on all of our properties.
Holy smokes!
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, listen, that's exactly why I wanted you on this podcast. Number one, because what you're doing is not the the Rex Hotel and the glamping aspect is not unique. I mean, I do it. Greg Barrett does it. There's a lot of people in the industry that do it, but few of us have been able, or and I'm going to touch on some of the things that you mentioned that I think led you to the success that you had, and I want to confirm that. But most of us haven't had the skill that you had and the foresight that you had to create that following, so that you can have that 95+% direct booking, because that is key. Those of you that follow my channel and follow this podcast, I've been saying this for the last 4 years. You need to focus on your branding, and you need to focus on direct bookings. Brian, like you, I've been in the short-term rental game before even Airbnb existed. Back before there was a thing of Airbnb, we used to call it seasonal rentals. I'm from South Florida, and this is where I started my business, renting out our properties. I house hacked just like you did, but we used to call it seasonal rentals. And then Airbnb came about. Now that it's synonymous with the short-term rental industry,
Right.
even though I hate calling it the Airbnb business, and because I'm not part of Airbnb, I'm part of my brand. But let's touch on when you bought the property, and you said that you were it was really like a side hustle or pet project because we were in COVID. There's really not much to do. But because you had the foresight to document this, so tell me how did what led to that, what caused you to believe, hey, let's document this? Was it just expand on that, because that was huge.
So the funny thing is about our social media following and our success with social media is that the first year of opening the Rex, so we opened that in 2021, we actually didn't have a social media following. A lot of our early success with the Rex was we actually did focus it more on just organic social media for the Rex itself, not Brian and Joanna Linton. And we had marketing experience. I think this was the key takeaway from the apparel industry is coming into hospitality. We came into it having built a $20 million brand. Like t-shirts are not unique either, just like, a hotel is not unique. So like we knew the principles of building a brand, and we knew how to basically get that word out there. But the initial phase was definitely, and this is to give some people actually some insight and confidence that you don't have to come into these situations with large social media followings. You can actually still have a very, very strong business and direct booking rate with or without a personal following. And so with the Rex, that first year, we were successful with just more of the fundamentals of marketing and the fundamentals of digital marketing, online marketing, social media, with really the focus on just the property itself, not the backstory so much. Now, what we saw though was whenever we started to on Stay the Rex Instagram's handle, when we started to in that process, when we did every once in a while share the personal snippets of our life, and when we were sharing the before and afters, like for just the purpose of the business alone, we were like on this, the property handle, we were showing a before picture and an after picture of the renovation. And we were sharing maybe like some insight into how we did it. Those were the posts that were just going bonkers on a very small platform, on a platform that had, 10, 20,000 followers at the time. Now, that is when we started to think, wow, there's definitely interest in the journey, not just the finished product. And so then we actually we were buying the campground. So down the road from the original hotel, there's this campground. It wasn't for sale. I approached the owners. We struck up a deal to buy it. In that process of buying the campground, I actually reached out to a TV network called Magnolia. It's owned by the Chip and Joanna Gangs folks, and it's part of Discovery. And they bought a pilot of a reality show based upon our life in Promised Land and the idea of documenting how we're redeveloping these projects there. And so we had a production company, we had filming going on, it was a whole thing. And that was my way of thinking, okay, if we can have a network TV show that highlights all of this work here, that's going to be the platform that we can attract a lot of guests and future opportunities to. And everything looked like that was happening. The pilot was beautiful. The story was immaculate. I think we were doing a good job, but just one day, like pretty far into the process, it got dropped. And that was actually early 2023, believe it or not. So it was pretty recently. And when that got dropped, I was like, damn, like I just put all of this mind thought and all this planning and all this strategy into this TV show that now somebody, because the distribution, they control that decision, right? Unlike social media and YouTube and things like that, one person at a network controlled that decision about sharing the story. And I was like, damn, like I have to now figure out how to do this because I want to do something. And so that's when I started finding.
Now, let me interrupt you for a second. Now, did you own the content, or was their content?
It was their content, and so yeah, so we had a contract with them. They funded the filming of that. I was able to get a waiver. It took a few months that I was sent a good amount of that content to be able to use because they had documented some really great stuff. And one of our early YouTube videos, I think it's titled, basically it's the one that says, we bought a rundown 1960s campground. A lot of the footage in there, if you watch it, is from the pilot show. It's slightly edited from that, but basically you can see the quality actually versus like my more organic YouTube videos. It's a more higher production value. That's the show. And it was called Welcome to Promised Land, by the way. So the show name, we weren't able to use that in our own. So instead of Welcome to Promised Land, I changed it to Finding Promised Land. And I started my own platform. And I was like, you know what? Network TV is dying anyways. It is. It truly is, right? Like it's I don't spend any time thinking about network TV shows. I spend all my time on social media. And so I decided that we were going to go after the social media channel. And it was quick, man. Like we blew up. Like it took a while. Like the first month we were able to get over 10,000 followers just telling our story. And then we quickly got to, 30, 40, 50,000. By the time Ferncrest opened up by June of 2023, so we started Finding Promised Land in March. By June 2023, we were already over 100,000. And now, we're collectively across our platforms, like I said, we're over 700,000. But the thing that I realized with that process, and this is what you were alluding to, is man, when we started to really click on social media, we weren't showing the finished product, and we weren't actually even like posting any more of the before and afters on the property platforms. The brand platforms are totally different than our behind the scenes one. But as our behind the scenes ones blew up, it just organically pushed out followers to our brands, to our properties. So those grew organically. They're not huge. Like Ferncrest has 40,000 followers. The Rex has maybe a similar amount. But ultimately, when I go and I walk these properties and I meet people, 9 times out of 10, they're our followers. 9 times out of 10, people are walking up, introducing themselves. Hey, I follow you. And so like we have tourism actually that goes to those properties because they follow the story. And that allows us to get a great direct booking rate, get a very loyal customer that comes back again and again and again, and also create brand value that goes and transcends the cash flow value, because these are businesses. These are not relying upon Airbnb. They're not relying upon third-party platforms. If and when we ever sell a property or a brand, they're worth more because of that as well.
That's 100% true. Guys, what he just said is true gold, people. Solid 18 karat gold information, what he just gave you. It's I can't express that enough. I've been preaching this for a very long time now. You have to be in and laser focus in your marketing. Now, I'm going to pitch our marketing team now. So for those of you that are looking to get into this game, focus on growing and starting your stuff, but you really need to document and hire. If you don't have the capacity or the knowledge to do it yourself, hire a company like ours in the marketing side so that we can get you started on the right foot. I can tell you, I've been in this industry for over 20 something years. And I wish to God I would have done it like Brian did it from day one. I just didn't know. And back then, like Brian mentioned, early on, it didn't matter what you put on any platform. It was going to sell, and it was going to sell quickly. But since 2023 onward, every year, and it's going to continue, it's become harder and harder. So you truly need to separate yourself. And the only way you're going to do that is by your marketing strategies. So thank you for sharing that, Brian. Before we move on from the marketing side aspect of it, because I really want to touch on or go a little deeper on the inception and the finding of Promised Land. But what else can you add to the viewers in terms of marketing? Like if someone's starting out right now, what should they be doing right off the bat?
So if they're getting into real estate like this, I think that the very first and foremost thing that we've already talked about a little bit, but it is really thinking about, what is the bigger brand and message and story that you're trying to communicate through these properties. Like you said, if you just listed stuff back in the day, just like when I did Airbnb almost 10 years ago, you didn't have to have anything. You just put it up and that was that. But I think that whether or not you're on Airbnb or you're really focused on direct booking, you definitely need to think about like what are the key messages and the key brand moments that you're trying to create when it comes to this, because that's going to be the cornerstone of the marketing for us. For instance, with Ferncrest, beyond our behind the scenes story, because the behind the scenes story is like a massive chunk of the marketing, but it doesn't really end there. The property itself and the amenities and everything that we speak to, we really focus on like the family friendly campground aspect of what that glamping experience is. And so really thinking about how to highlight that in a way that is meaningful. And the best way to do that, and this is true, this has been true for the last few years, and it's going to be probably even more true in 2025 as marketing gets more competitive, is leveraging influencer stays, but leveraging them in the correct way, and not just trying to like have a scattershot approach to just like, oh, you have like 500,000 followers, so I'm going to give you a free stay. Because to be honest, a lot of the things with social media are vanity metrics now. It's less important how many followers somebody has. It's more important how many true followers and engagement you have. Like the engagement and the ability for an influencer to really create content that has a higher chance of going viral is really important, because it happens to every creator like me. I can post something and I can get 30,000 views. If it doesn't go well, that's like low for me, tens of thousands. But if it goes really well, it can have millions. And you want to have the greater chance of success. So you're working with influencers that are posting quality content. You might even be paying them, but the actual impact of an influencer can be phenomenal. And it doesn't require you to tell your behind the scenes story. It doesn't require you to do anything other than make sure that you're focused on getting the right people. Case in point, Ferncrest opened up, and one of the first influencers that we had stay there, we didn't pay her. It was a free night stay. So $250 stay, it cost us the cleaning, right? Maybe 30 bucks. She posted, and within a few days, we had generated $50,000 in bookings from her post because it went viral on TikTok. And it was a great post, don't get me wrong, but it was a concerted effort on our end to make sure that we get the right people and we have a greater chance of success. That same post could have gone flat and it might have generated nothing. But the reality is that like influencer stays are highly impactful. And you, as the property owner, can be your own influencer, like me. Like I am my own, and I am my biggest influencer. So when I do stuff and I can drive millions of dollars of value to my properties, but that's not always enough because my perspective and my angle is different. I'm not a, a Midwestern mom, right? I'm not a suburban whatever. So like you find those avatars in the influencer world that are creating content that might speak to other people like them. And that's going to increase the marketing reach substantially and for the best bang for your buck, because it's so affordable comparative to what the cost of, say, ad campaigns or marketing campaigns. And it's not to say that you shouldn't have some paid focus as well, some paid digital focus, but I think the combination of all of these things is what makes a marketing plan really work at a high level.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of influencers, but I see too many people make the mistake of just hiring any influencer. And I think that's a big mistake because, like you mentioned, especially today, it doesn't matter how many followers you have. What matters is how many loyal followers that are going to buy from you. That's important.
And also, like, are they doing a good job with creating content that is resonating? I hate to say it, but are they educated, and do they know what's working with the algorithm? And are they able to create content that has a higher likelihood to hit? Like if every creator knew that every piece of their content would hit with the algorithm, that's not the case. So like even sometimes my hits are I'm like, really, that worked, that's getting out to 1 million people. Like I didn't see that coming. Whereas like you post something really good and you're like, oh man, that's amazing, and then I get to 50,000 people. And some people hear these numbers and they're like, man, I would love to, 50,000 would be viral to some people, right? So there is a level of like, that's where our larger following comes into play, where we know even a failure is not quite a failure. But at the end of the day, like increasing those odds, those like, the batting average of the hits is very clear. But there is a lot of gamification of social media out there that a lot of people have very large following numbers that don't matter at all. They post content that's not hitting a chord. They very well might have purchased followers. It happens all the time. There's a lot of influencers that have done that. I'd say that bigger brands and more sophisticated companies can see through that pretty quickly. Even non-sophisticated people can see through that really quickly. If you see a follower and you can see their comments and know that it's not engagement, it's not true engagement, it's bots and things like that. So I'd say that that's the very basic level, is like just making sure that that level of engagement is high and the chances of a hit, a home run, is high as well. Then it's making sure that the person is actually aligned with what you would actually see their followers and their people staying there. Again, if it's a model that just is shooting bikini shots and everything like that, and like aspirational, maybe she gets a ton of likes, but like, does that translate into stays? Like for me, an example would be, young family, mom with a couple kids. She documents herself like at the playground, at the tent, cooking dinner over the campfire. She has all these mommy friends that are like, oh my God, where is that? I want to stay. Like that's the type of engagement. That's the type of influencer for us that we want. And that's how you have to think, okay, if you're a couples resort, are you getting the right type of couple there that has a really genuine following that is going to be interested in it? Now, not all of them are going to work. Like there's plenty of influencers that show up and it's not because of their fault. It's just the nature of the content game, but that's why you got to take enough hits at bat. So like essentially if you have, 20 influencer stays and you're giving them all free stays and 90 or, most of them don't work, but say 10% do and 10% have like a viral post that goes really well. Well, those viral posts alone can generate. I mean, I have a buddy in Utah. He's a experiential glamping place. He just had an influencer stay. He did pay that influencer $1,000. But he had an influencer stay go to 27 million views. And he booked hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue from that. Hundreds of thousands from one stay. So that happens. So that is the type of thing that you're trying to curate your influencers based upon the prototype and the person that you think should stay there. And then then there is a variable of luck. There's a variable of algorithmic luck that has to come into play. But if you don't take enough hits, you're not going to have that.
Yeah, you have to. It's that old saying: you have to go up to bat, otherwise you're never going to hit the ball. It's not going to happen.
And you can do it with free stays, Fernando. Like free stays are fine. Like I've done a lot of free stays. I'd say that I'm looking more and more recently, especially just even because my buddy's success, who like at first it's like you pay somebody $1,000. That seems like that is a lot of money. And they're getting a free stay. But then you start to think about the economic return of that. And you're like, man, even if you had 10 people that you paid 10,000, and again, it's the power law. It's just like investing in anything. It's like, when venture capitalists make investments into startups, it's like, you don't expect all of them to succeed, but you know that one is going to succeed so disproportionately better than anything else you could do that it makes it all worth it. And that's what the influencer game is right now.
I like that. Now, let's shift gear. We don't have a lot of time left, but I want to shift gear and specifically talk about glamping and the eco hotel industry and the wellness industry. Because, even though you did early on a traditional short-term rental when you rented out that apartment downstairs for when you were living, but your current two projects and the projects that you're going to be going into the future are not that traditional stay. So talk about that. Why did you do that? Where do you see the future of that going, etc.?
Yeah, I think Airbnb and single family short-term rentals they're not going away by any means, but they have a difficult path to navigate over the coming years, both with regulation and competition. And I think that the people that succeed will succeed really well. There's some operators out there that have an amazing portfolio of Airbnbs that, I know that despite anything competition wise, the competition is good because the best do better and the worst die. Right. And so at the end of the day, I think that single family is just a space that I won't play in just because it is such a busy playing field right now. But I think that the white space, which will probably get crowded in the coming years, but I think the white space and opportunity for operators is in boutique hospitality. And boutique hospitality is really, not single family. It's 10, 20, 30 unit, like key type of properties where it's boutique hotels, boutique motels, glamping resorts, landscape hotels, all of those types of things. Those are where you can really not only see more return because you just have more units to rent. Like for instance, if you have an Airbnb in the market of the Poconos, so like where we have the Rex Hotel, if I had an Airbnb, a cabin, I could buy a cabin for, say $300,000, $400,000. And then I could put it on an Airbnb and I could get $200 to $300 a night for it. But I could also buy a motel maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit more effort. But then each of those small rooms, even though they're hotel rooms, they're getting the same ADR, the same average daily rate as an entire cabin. And some people are like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would anybody pay $250, $300 for a 200 square foot hotel room when they can get a cabin? And here's the reason. Not everybody wants to stay in a cabin. Not everybody wants a big Airbnb. Not everybody has like a big family or friends. And not everybody wants to worry about the variable that they have in their mind now and the reputation of Airbnb scenarios where they're cleaning the toilet and they're like responsible for doing the dishes and the sheets and everything like that. We offer a hotel experience in a smaller, intimate setting, and people are willing to pay for that. So a 10 key like boutique hotel like the Rex, on a summer weekend can generate $4,000 or $5,000 a night, and essentially for the same investment as an Airbnb. So the return profile is better with boutique hotels, but the effort is also higher. Like you do have to manage it as a business, but as long as you can wrap your head around this idea that you're actually running a business and not just a passive Airbnb listing, the return can be so much greater. So that's where I think things are going for operators. The best operators are going to become hotel owners, resort operators. It's going to give traditional Hyatts, Marriotts, Hiltons a run for their money. Like I think we're going to start to chip away at the institutional larger hotels as people start to look for that space between the Airbnbs and the bigger resorts. There's this zone that a lot of people are seeing. And it's not different than what existed 50, 60 years ago. All of these smaller mom and pop operators, they just struggled until this renaissance has happened, where not only is this renaissance of design and aesthetic and wellness and all of these things, but also technology. The technology that's now available that allows us to manage these smaller properties means that I don't have to be a slave to my property. I don't have to live there. I live far away. And that didn't exist before because smaller properties had to have owner operators, right? They had to be there. I'm an operator, but I don't live there because of technology.
100% agree. And I wish we had more time to dive into that because that's a subject that I'm very interested in, one that I preach a lot. And I agree with you. I did the same thing. So about almost 2 years ago, we shifted. So I have a pretty decent portfolio of short-term rentals, all residential homes. But about 2 years ago, we shifted into large. When I say larger, I don't mean large complex. But for us, the sweet spot is an apartment building that has about 10 units. And we convert all 10 into short-term rentals. In essence, converted into a small hotel. We did the same thing not only in the U.S., but where we started experimenting with that was in Colombia. So that's where I got into the glamping industry as well. We started with the Geodome. We did an Eco Hotel in Colombia. But going back to what you were discussing, I firmly agree that the residential side, the traditional Airbnb that everyone thinks about, is still going. It's not going to go away. But as an investor, I think that's not where your highest ROI is going to be, just because of the competition. Because for example, South Florida has gotten crazy. I'll give you a quick rundown. We just closed on a property that's we paid $485,000 for that property, and the reason we bought it, not because we thought it was going to be a great Airbnb. No, we bought it was because of the equity value play on that property, because we were getting it for a lot less than what it's worth. Now, had I not gotten that equity play, I'm not spending that money there. That's why I'm in Georgia, because for $400,000, I can buy a plot of land, develop that land, and my ROI is much greater than it would be in South Florida. And just same thing goes into other areas like major cities. Regulations is cutting into the profits. But like you said, it's not going away. Those operators that have, that are operating at a high standard will do well. and will be around forever. And it's going to weed out what I call the wannabes, right? It'll weed them out. And we're already starting to see in terms of actual numbers coming down. So in South Florida alone, we saw between Q4 of 2024 and going into Q1 of 2025, we've seen available listings drop so far by 18%, which is a lot. But for me, it's good because majority of my portfolio is in South Florida. So I can get a better market rate there. So let's close with the following two questions, and let me just jump ahead here real quick so that I can get you out of here. Now, in 2025, put on your Swami hat and tell me what do you predict 2025 is going to bring for the hospitality industry?
I think last year, the data is still not fully out there, but I think 2024 was not a great year for the hospitality industry. I don't think it was bad, but I think it was a little bit on the fritz. Like we saw some softness that, I wasn't expecting going in 2024. And I think there was the political, condition of like it being an election year. A lot of people are just fixated on that. And so I think domestic travel in the United States suffered in 2024. And I think that we're going to shake free from that cloud in 2025. And we're going to see a really strong hospitality market in 2025. I think that there's going to be a lot of people that, start to experiment more and more with health and wellness and outdoor life and things like that. I think I have a hotel. I don't know if you know this. I have a hotel in Philadelphia as well. I have an urban hotel, and I don't think the future is really as good in urban environments as it is in outdoors. I think the outdoor hospitality market is gonna have its sort of banner year in 2025. There's a lot of projects that are in development. I think that the attention to things like landscape resorts, glamping resorts, things like that are going to get really big. And I think that what you'll see towards the end of 2025 is you'll start to see some of the major players try to get into it as well. Marriott just acquired what was called Getaway, now it's called Postcard. I think that's the first domino to fall. I think that there will be consolidation that starts towards the end of 2025. Whether or not that be mid-sized players buying each other up, or the Hiltons, the Marriotts, the Hyatts, the IHGs coming into the space. I think it's going to be, this is still a smaller operator type of business right now, but I think you're going to see the smaller operators start to see some tremendous success and maybe see some interesting partnerships and collaborations happening towards the end of the year.
Yeah, no, and guys, him and I have not talked about this subject. This is the first time we're actually talking about it, because it's funny because I just did so every Sunday I do STR News and Digest podcast, and I just talked about what you just said. I mentioned Marriott entering this market. I mentioned how 2024 wasn't that great for the travel industry, and I really predict, and for the same reason you just mentioned, and we saw it in the numbers. So just to give you a recap for those that didn't watch my Sunday's podcast, Q4, specifically November, December, in the travel industry was the highest number of travelers that the U.S. saw in decades. But I think it was what he just said was because prior to that, it was an election year, so much going on. The moment the election was over, the floodgates opened. It was so crazy in terms of domestic travel that I'm sure you heard the news. American Airlines systems crashed. You had delays after delays in air travel, and don't even talk about vehicle travel. I talked about, my home base is in Fort Lauderdale, but because of my project in Georgia, I've been driving back and forth. A drive that normally would have taken me 6 hours was taking me between 9 and 10 hours because of that many people were on the road during the holidays. So I firmly believe and agree with you that in 2025, the glamping industry, but specifically the wellness industry. This is why in my property here in Georgia, it's a couples retreat, but it's really meant for couples that are looking into the wellness space, because we have horseback riding, we have mountain bike trails, we have archery, we're gonna have yoga classes, all sorts of outdoor activities for those that want to escape the city and bond with nature, but also be active at the same time, because we're going to have all those activities. The last thing I'm going to ask you is someone, first of all, second to the last thing, someone that is looking to get into this specific market, what advice would you give them?
Advice to get in this market, I would say that, don't try to follow the crowd. Really make sure that you're finding an opportunity in a white space that, like, if like we're talking about wellness, we're talking about glamping, we're talking about these markets. I would say that there's opportunity everywhere in hospitality. Like there's people creating crazy concepts, and like the more niche you can be and the more interesting you can and differentiated you can be, the better. So if you're trying to make the biggest bang for your buck, it's actually not to do what everybody else is doing. It's to do something super unique for a smaller group of people. And that's a great way. Maybe the actual return on that might be smaller, but if you're trying to get in and you're trying to really make a name for yourself, you got to niche down and figure out what that looks like.
Awesome. Let's close with this. What, like, if someone's interested in either partnering up with you or learning more about you, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of different ways. The best way is to check us out on social media. Finding Promised Land is the handle. You can also look at findingpromisedland.com for all the different things that we do as a company. One of the big things that we're doing with Ferncrest is we have a franchise system for that. So we're helping people set up their own Ferncrest properties. They don't have to build their own brand. They don't have to do their own marketing. We have many Ferncrests that are going to be opening up across the country in the coming 12 months. I just got back from a visit with one yesterday. We opened one in Oklahoma. So if you're interested in getting in this space but don't want to build it on your own, franchising is a potential option as well.
Awesome. All right, my beautiful people, if you guys, I'm going to have all his information in the description below. But if you guys have any questions, either DM us, email us, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed. I love you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.